Good evening, Hobbiteers. Welcome to another Hobbit live stream. Tonight, Jenny and Joy are both busy, so I am going to be the host this evening. Tonight, we have a good friend and former colleague of mine, Steve Sersky, resident Canadian and language learner and English teacher, to talk with us today about language learning motivation. Steve, how are you tonight?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me. Very good to be here. Shout out to everybody out in the internet land.
Thank you for coming. So
Appreciate it.
How are things for you? How is life in China now?
I know the news outside can be very negative at times. Things here in Beijing, like my compound itself, we have not been locked down, but a few places around us have been. But last week, I noticed that there's a couple of buildings, they were locked down last week and 2 weeks before. They are no longer locked down anymore. So, I saw the news even today in the Chinese news broadcast that they were upping the measures here in Beijing because some of the universities had in 2 weeks recent cases. They are no longer locked down. According to the map that I'm watching right now, which is China-based, the cases, they're not red. So that's a good thing. We don't want red. Yes. Red means they're closed, they're sealed, but there are quite a few medium risk areas. So they want you to scan your QR code, check your temperature. I'm doing daily nucleic acid tests every morning. It's part of my morning routine now. I just go, I get swabbed. It takes it's no time at all, which is very nice. It's not like it was a year ago, 2 years ago, where it was a big ordeal. Now it's down the street, walk in, show your information, and they almost know me by name now. Almost, because the autofill feature. I think yes. I've approached enough of the people that the autofill feature on their phone has my name in there. At least 2 or 3 of them do. It's pretty funny, actually.
Well, and also, you've got a good size beard.
Yeah, I guess since the last time we spoke, it's grown out a little bit. This year is a special year for me. I'm changing decades. So I figured this is going to be one of my last times in this decade to be able to grow out such a beard. And I also have a philosophy, one that was I sort of thought up many years ago when I was backpacking through Southeast Asia, was that I think every young man should grow out a big beard. If they can. If they can't, of course, I understand, but because some gentlemen can't grow facial hair as well as some others. But for me, it's like the last time I had a big beard like this, I was unemployed in Southeast Asia, Malaysia, I think it was, and Myanmar was there as well. And so it was big 6-inch beard. And then finally I shaved it off when I got a job again. So I'm going to do the same thing again, except this time I'm employed. So this is a little bit different. Last time I was unemployed. This time I'm employed. But yeah, big Karl Marx type beard. It doesn't have to be Karl Marx. It could be anyone. Those big philosopher beards like Freud. And did Jung have a beard? I'm not sure if he did. Maybe he was clean shaven.
Well, I can assure you that General Longstreet certainly did.
Okay, so like the big classic beards that you'd see in the good old days when people had to sit there.
The American Civil War. Wow. A lot of the American Civil War generals had really full beards.
Yeah. Good old
days. Go down to the middle of their chest sometimes.
Where shaving was sort of, I don't want to go that far. There's actually, speaking of that, if I can give one little anecdote of the beards that I encountered while I was in Southeast Asia. There was one time in particular that I was proper big, and there was another guy who came in, and his beard was like this big, and then there was another guy who came down, and his beard was like down to the ground. So we were the 3 people who we all had different sizes of beards. Like the 3 monkeys that this, right? Yeah. We were the exact same thing, but we were for beards instead.
Quite impressive. Speaking of the philosophers, Some of the Greek philosophers, some of their statues, they got some fully not grown beards, which reminds
Yes.
me, you, sir, studied to become a classicist. And so that entailed you studying foreign languages.
Yeah, I did. And it shocks everybody who finds that out. It shocks me. It shocked my father. It shocked everybody, basically, because they're like, what are you going to do with that? My hometown is in the middle of the Canadian prairies. So it's like, if there is any culture that is so far removed from the classics, it'd be my hometown. My hometown was, there were more Ukrainians, a lot of Mennonites. Mennonites had huge beards. A lot of Icelandic as well. So it wasn't Greek and Italians. We had an Italian community for sure. We had a Greek community, but by far most of the farmers, they're Ukrainian or German, basically. They weren't. So that's basically
Southern European.
It wasn't classics, basically. Yeah, they weren't the Romans, the Latins, the Greek, ancient Greek speakers, and certainly not the bookish type so much. But yeah, there's a classics community in my hometown, both universities. By no means do I regret ever studying Latin and ancient Greek. It gave me a lot, and especially in my adult life, being able to study those in a formal setting and to the level that I did it. It paid off, I think. I don't think it was a good exercise, a very good exercise.
So, what were some of the things that you did, whether you were studying ancient languages? To be clear to our audience, ancient Greek is a dead language. It is not the Greek used in modern times.
Yeah.
But Steve, well, actually, I should ask first. So you are Canadian. So you studied French in school, yes?
Yes. Canada requires us to study French from grades 3 until grade 10. It's mandatory. After grade 10, it becomes an option. And so at grade 10, grade 11, grade 12, I stopped studying French and I chose art instead. Whatever. I mean, it is what it is. I figured I could learn French later on, but I guess the same could have been said about art. The other things, given my lineage of being Ukrainian Canadian and the school that I went to, I studied Ukrainian from grade 3 until grade 8 at my school, and that was in addition to going to Ukrainian lessons on the weekend, Saturday morning from 9 a.m. until 1 p.m. And the last part was aggravatingly terrible because if this lady ever sees this, because we are still in touch, but she's a phenomenal singer, very well known. And I understand that she was dealing with a bunch of children who probably didn't want to be there. And so, but the last hour, so the first 3 hours, 9 until 12, was like lessons, like class lessons in a classroom, writing down books, writing down letters or whatever in Ukrainian. The last hour was singing lessons. And so we had to learn, and it was like, we would learn the Ukrainian national anthem. We would sing the traditional songs for a lot of Ukrainian, not nationalist songs, but national traditional songs from Ukraine. And those, I mean, you speak to any Ukrainian, they'll all know those songs. They're famous. A lot of Taras Shevchenko as well. He's a famous poet from 100 years ago, 150 years ago or so. So yeah, it was, but that last hour was just, it was brutal, painful. Not just because it was like singing lessons, but because it was like the last hour. And then like I'd been in school all week, and now Saturday morning I'm at more school in a language that I don't really understand very well. To be clear, we spoke English at home, and Ukrainian was sort of an add-on. And then French was only at school for that class. I never spoke French anywhere else. Never really needed it to.
So you were second generation. Your grandparents were from Ukraine?
On my dad's side, My dad's parents came from Ukraine. On my mom's side, her grandparents came from Ukraine.
So you had some
yeah.
opportunity to practice with family?
Oh, I think one of the biggest regrets, it can't really be a regret because being young and trying to do so
You
much at
can't
the
know.
same time. Yeah, it was, well, my dad's mom, like my dad's dad, my Dido, my grandfather, he died a year after I was born. So like I never met him, but my grandmother, my Baba, she only spoke Ukrainian, like 100% only Ukrainian. She grew up where they immigrated to, or where they ended up, I should say. She lived there until the day that she died. I still have an uncle there as well, but and a couple aunts. I still have family there. But my grandmother, she only spoke Ukrainian, and there was sort of a desire to be able to speak Ukrainian with her, but to get to that level, we would have had to be speaking Ukrainian at home regularly, rather than studying it at school and then a couple hours on the weekend, sort of thing. It was I know quite a few of the people I know in my hometown, they still speak Ukrainian, and they speak Ukrainian at home, and a lot of them are speaking Ukrainian with their children today, and they're second or third generation. There is a push to keep the culture and the language alive. For sure. Absolutely.
Certainly. And so a big part of that is keeping motivated and keeping focused in your studies. And that can be hard to develop, whether you're a child or an adult.
If there's any parents watching, the only thing that I would ask, request, suggest, because I don't have children, so I understand there's fights that go on, and I know I wasn't the best of children at all. I was a little shit disturber. And I was one of those terrible students who wouldn't sit down and just focus. I was always all over the place, very excited. But to think back of all that time that I could have been spent learning more about the language, learning the culture, and being fluent in Ukrainian. Maybe French as well, but French, that wasn't my culture. Ukrainian was my culture. And it would have been a lot better had I spent more time. I can tell you, there is a defining moment in my childhood that I remember as like, I should have said yes. And it was terrible on me because I doubted myself. I didn't believe that I could do it. And what it was is that in grade 4 or 5, grade 6, maybe, the Ukrainian classes split. So you had your regular common people's Ukrainian classes for people who were like we had a lot of immigrants in our school too, and they had to learn Ukrainian, and they're like, you don't care about this language. But then there was also the other second generation kids that they knew Ukrainian, spoke Ukrainian at home. And I remember one of them, a good friend of mine, he's like, Steve, why don't you join us? Come in to this class. We can get away from the big class. We're very free. We just have projects to do. We do whatever we want. We go to the library. There was only 3 of them, and I could have been the 4th one. I said, no, I can't do it. My Ukrainian is not good enough. And I think that was, I don't want to say it was a defining moment. I guess it had to be, because I just didn't focus on Ukrainian enough to learn and to master the language. I should have done that. I should have done a lot more, and I should have taken that. I should have pushed myself to step up rather than staying at the same level. That's all my fault, and I think I've been struggling with that ever since.
Yeah. So you think you would have gone into Slavic studies perhaps instead of the classics?
Oh, very good question, because I do know quite a few people who did take Slavic studies for pretty much that reason. Was, first of all, it was kind of like they already knew everything. So it's like getting an English degree. It's like, it. You just have to show up and do it, right?
You're right.
For some of my friends, getting a Slavic studies degree was like, well, I can meet the language requirement. I know the history, so I can coast by in 4 years and get a degree that pretty much, it's the same as doing anything else in the arts usually. But Would I have done that? Good question. That would have been interesting. I think I don't know if I would have, because at some point I kind of was thinking that Ukrainian and French would have happened anyway, and so I wanted to take myself somewhere else. The whole Latin and ancient Greek, the reason I fell into that, it was because I failed computer science. I sucked at math. I was terrible. It was like my, I remember calculus. That was what was my first F? My first F was matrices, like studying matrices and stuff like that.
Okay, all
no
right.
clue how to do it. That was my first F ever. I like, yeah, at university, first semester as well. My first VW, voluntary withdrawal, was calculus. I think was it the year later? I can't remember. I remember looking at calculus, and my brother was trying to explain it to me, and we're trying to find derivatives.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're trying to find all of the points around the point. And I'm going, how are you doing that? That's dumb. It seems like if I just find the point. Why don't you find the point instead of like all the points around the point? To be fair, you know that I'm interested in finances as well. The idea of derivatives is huge in stock trading and finances as well. So now I understand the concept, but still that night when like my brother was trying to explain it to me, and he's like, Stephen, why don't you just give up? And the next day I did the telephone dial in, the VW code. You didn't have to call customer service. You called there's a special line. If you want a VW, press this number. If you want to do this, press this number. VW, done, gone. Goodbye calculus, goodbye computer science, failed, gone. What did I get an A in? Latin. Okay, I guess I'm studying Latin.
So that's what got you motivated. Not going to do computer science.
It was, the A was motivating because it was like, well, I'm not dumb, like I'm not stupid, I'm not incapable, I am capable. And why did I succeed in Latin was because I was able to take an interest and put the time in. To be fair, intro Latin is very easy. And I got into ancient Greek later on because in my third year of Latin, and my Latin classes were always very small, like, and they got smaller as you
progress. Yeah.
Like first year you had 30 students, second year you had a dozen, and then by third year it's like, the other two guys in the room, and maybe one girl shows up or something like that. But ancient Greek, I remember one of my professors just saying, well, this is third year advanced Latin already. It's like, if you're going to be reading Latin at this level, you may as well start reading ancient Greek. And so I was like, okay, start reading ancient Greek. And so I did. I just started reading ancient Greek, and ancient Greek was difficult. Ancient Greek was more difficult than Latin by far. Just so many more declensions, conjugations, moods, aspects, and all this. It was very difficult. But when you're reading ancient Greek, you feel that much closer to the source material than you do even with Latin. Latin has a lot of fame to it, a lot of renown, like big, but ancient Greek, that's when you're reading Herodotus, the father of history, Plato, Aristotle, Euripides, the tragedians that changed like story history, that we still, like, you mentioned those names to any person who's interested in theater, film, or anything, those are the names that come up.
So one of your big motivations for studying, especially ancient Greek, was that you really wanted to read the text as it was originally written.
There was two motivations. The first one was actually that I ended up majoring in film studies. Not majoring. I also majored in film studies. I did 2 degrees at once because it was just that easy to swap the arts courses.
But I was studying classics with the idea that I was going to learn the mythologies and the stories of history that would feed into my filmmaking. That was the idea. So that was number one. Number two, yes, there at some point, I can't remember, I think I remember when I was first introduced to Latin, when I was reading a book in high school, I was like, that would be interesting. My sister said to me, yeah, very offhandedly, Latin is a language without periods. What? How can a language not have periods?
Oh, okay, yes.
And it's a little bit different, because what she was talking about was that there are inscriptions that have no periods, no punctuation per se. But yeah, there became a point where it was kind of like, I don't feel as if I'm reading it if I'm not reading it in what it was written in. Like we read all these things in English, the translations, and it's good. And even as you progress through your studies in university, they encourage you to read the different translations that are available, so that you know how people before understood them and how the cultures before translated the words from Latin into English or whatever, and that how the tradition has continued. But yeah, I mean, is it snobbish to think that, yeah, I was like, no, I'm going to read these in proper ancient Greek and Latin, and that's it. And I just want a library full of Latin books and ancient Greek. Done. So yeah, it was a little bit like that. Not snobbish. It was certainly I wanted to be able to look at a Latin text, at an ancient Greek text, and go, I can read that.
And you'd also be able to answer any of the questions at a pub quiz dealing with Latin.
Yeah, the strange thing is I'm terrible at pub quizzes. Like, I'm terrible because I think a lot of people know a lot more about classics than I do, because my job as a student of the classics was to read so much and to learn so much about things, that I read all these academic books about things. But some people, like, you'll meet someone on the street and they'll be like, oh man, you study classics, do you remember when? And then they specific example, and you're like, I don't know. Did that happen? Could have. Let's check the history books, because part of like one of the things being a scholar in classics is like, well, you would go to the primary source material and check if that's what happened, right? And or you would go to another history book and check, yes, okay, that's exactly what happened. But I mean, I didn't sit around memorizing facts about like the Battle of Salamis or like the Battle of Thermopylae. Or I mean, I almost hate to say it, I think a lot of my knowledge of the classics nowadays is based on movies like 300. It's terrible to say, but Hollywood has saved my historical memory.
Well, so you don't feel too bad. As you know, that was my intentions to become a classicist as well. But I wound up getting into ESL and EFL also. And I had the same thing.
Why? What happened?
Well, when I graduated from college, I was looking to go to UCLA. And now, mind you, this was 2004. And at the time, I would have been treated as an out-of-state student, because I graduated from university in Kansas, even though I'd gone to middle school and elementary school in California. Well, what that means is that I would have been paying $20,000 a year at that time.
Yeah.
For out-of-state tuition. Whereas if I could establish that I'm in-state again, then it would have been down to like several $1,000s a year. And so I needed something to do for a couple of years, and I wound up teaching in China for a while. Yes, I had to get a job. I couldn't just sit around. And so I taught English in China, and well, that's that. So you were a dual major. How did you manage your time? How did you keep track and remain focused when you're doing film? I mean, earlier you're telling me you spend a lot of time editing, a lot of time doing this, watching other films. How did you manage all of your time for language studies?
Well, I didn't sleep very much. I drank a lot of coffee, and I can't encourage anyone to be that unhealthy, to tell you the truth. Because like I was doing when I say I double majored, it's true, because I was doing classics, I was doing filmmaking, but then I was also doing the language requirements for classics, which meant Latin and ancient Greek. A lot of people, if they get into classics, they either do the languages or they do the history first, and then they go back and fill in the blanks, whatever they need to get into a master's degree or a PhD. So the idea, I remember when I was applying for the master's degree, they asked me, like, so what are your languages up to snuff, basically? And I was like, I guess I've been studying them here for like 5 years. At that point, I've been studying them. I think I've taken all your Greek and Latin courses that you guys offer. And so they looked at it like, yeah, okay, no problem. But in terms of time management, yeah, I could have done better. I could have done a lot better. There was a lot of verb conjugations, just writing down like sheets upon sheets of Latin and Greek conjugations, declensions, you name it. I also had a couple jobs when I was in university, so it was very, very busy, very busy. One of my motivators, though, to really try to excel and do my best was to be able to sight read Latin. So I wanted to get my ability up to the point where I could show up to class with little preparation and read through things. I don't think it worked very well, but it was a motivator to keep on working on it and to practice my language throughout. One of the things that gets difficult about the classics is that you have to do a lot of parsing. So your professor will stop and go, what's that word? Give me the breakdown. And you have to give them like the 4 parts of, so it's like, it's the infinitive, or it's the third person singular, past tense, aorist, modal, whatever it is. And you go subjunctive or something like that, and you have to get it all down. They would test you on this. This is part of your translation studies, that you'd have to get them all correct. Yeah, in terms of time management and learning all of that, I mean, back then, like Latin, ancient Greek, Mandarin Chinese is different because it doesn't have the same thing, but Russian is, where a lot of my time was spent conjugations, declensions, just writing them out over and over and over again until I could blindly, like I could close my eyes, look away from the page, and just write down the 6 declensions that I needed, the 6 forms that I needed. And then every class, yeah, we were getting tested. We were being asked about the different parts of speech, I guess you'd call it, that we encountered in the books. But what I think the one thing I would have done better, done differently, that I am doing differently now with my studies, is that I would block off more time when my brain is awake, because I would be doing so much that sometimes I wouldn't sit down to do my Latin or Greek until late at night. And the other bad thing, and most students, I'm no different, you put it off to the last minute. So like Sunday evening or Monday morning, you're like, oh, geez, I have to translate 70 lines of Latin for tomorrow. I'll do it later. And then you still haven't done it. One thing I found is that with my current classes is that if I would be able to, I would do my homework closer to when it was assigned. So I would go to class, and then after class, I would start looking at that homework. The other thing is that, again, going back to working when my brain's actually awake, I would have spent more time in the morning, like getting up just go from 7 a.m. till 9 a.m. and make it my job to learn the language at that time. I found like right now with my Mandarin studies, it helps. It's phenomenal. My brain is dedicated to this language right now in the morning. Don't bother me, basically.
So let me describe to you what it is like for a lot of our listeners. In Vietnam, usually classes are 3 times a week, either Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. And
how long?
It's an hour and a half. But they almost always do it after work. And so what that usually means is classes start at like 7 or maybe sometimes 8 at night. So
my heart goes out to you.
is it, and so they usually don't start work until 9. Okay, they work 9 to 6, and so that means that gives them an hour to go from their home to where the school or the language school site or something like that.
Yeah.
What could you maybe recommend to them in terms of time?
Well, I think we'd have to move away from the Latin and Greek studies at that point, because again, I don't think that was a very good example of how to study a language. But to sympathize and empathize with your listeners, the working people. Yes, you got jobs, you're making money, you're supporting your families, yourselves. Good. My dad is proud of you. God rest his soul, but he would be very proud to hear that you guys you're working, you got jobs, and you're studying languages at the same time. For myself, with the job that I have here in China, we did a lot of traveling, and we used to, prior to the current epidemic that's still going on. But after work, this was like biblical almost. Like it was like having another class that, first of all, can I say that I didn't sign up for language classes for a very long time because I thought they were horribly ineffective, garbage, terrible, especially late at night when you worked all day and now you're going to sit across from a teacher who may or may not be good. They may or may not know what they're doing. That's fine. Not always their problem, but they're going to ask you questions. You're like, well, I don't know. I didn't have time to do my homework. And it's like, I took it upon myself that if I want to learn this language, Mandarin Chinese, which is a very difficult language, that I would have to put in the time myself. I would have to make the time. And so after work, I would go back to the hotels, wherever we were. And if it didn't matter, people were like, oh, you're going to be at the gym? I'm like, I can't do gym until later. You want to go for dinner? Can't do dinner until later, after the gym, typically. So I would get back to the hotel room 4:30, 5 o'clock. I would make myself 1 cup of coffee, and it would be a weaker type of coffee because I didn't want to be up all night. But given that I was coming back after work and I was drained from that, I needed a little pick-me-up. And I don't drink energy drinks because I think they're terrible for you. But having 1 cup of coffee, watered down a little bit, I would sit down and do 1 hour of Mandarin Chinese studies, and I wouldn't leave until that was done. It had to be done, because with that, not only was I progressing in the language, I felt better. I felt better about myself having put in the time and being able to sit there and I would look forward to it, because my work day would lead up to like how much more I'm going to do my Mandarin. I can't wait to get that hour in. So once I get the hour in, I'm done. Cha-ching, basically, right?
Now, for example, could students reasonably expect, if they have an hour lunch, maybe they decide that they're going to take the middle 30 minutes each day? Or is it just that you really shouldn't try to squeeze it in between other big tasks that you're doing? Or how should you try to manage your time in that kind of situation?
It's going to come down to how much you want it. It really is. And a lot of your students, I'm assuming, are English learners. They're learning English.
Correct.
Right. I think you guys are lucky because there's much more of an incentive to learn the language. By learning English, by any and all the means necessary, you have such an opportunity to learn and to grow and to go places with the English language. It's phenomenal. I mean, I've benefited from it as well, because I teach and I've been able to travel the world because my passport and my language, they're needed, and that's been very beneficial. So with busy people who are, I mean, I know it's difficult when you're working full time, you don't have much time. At lunchtime, you're like, I just like to eat and, chill out. My thing is that at my work, what would happen is that we'd all congeal in the break room, And then inevitably what would happen is that we'd start talking about work, and it would never be productive work. It would be like, oh, can you believe this? Can you believe that? Oh, what did he say? And you're like, oh my, and it was so negative. And it wasn't always negative. And there are I work with a lot of great people as well. They're intelligent people, but you can get very quickly ensnared and snarled in this sort of negative feedback where you just complain. So I made the choice that if I'm living in China, I see how some other foreigners, they've been here for years, they don't know the language. I'm not going to be that. Number two, if I'm going to learn this language, how am I going to do it? And the only way I could do it was to make it part of my day and make it easy. So what did I do? You asked about lunchtime. Lunchtime, I would take my books. I would have my salad, because I started eating salad during the day as well. And I took my books into my room, into the office area that we were given. And while I was eating, I would have my headphones in. I'd be listening to Chinese podcasts. And then when I was done eating, I would open a book and I would read for 5 minutes. That was all in Pinyin at that time. After that, so it took me 15, 20 minutes to eat, and then 5 minutes of reading. And that very luckily made me very sleepy. After that, I would lie down and take a 10-minute nap. We only had a 40-minute lunch or an hour lunch. It wasn't very long, but I would take a 10-minute nap, 6 to 10 minutes, because I found that was a very good duration where you would start passing out, start falling asleep. You would rest, your body would relax. The important thing is that you can't be sitting. I found that I couldn't sit and sleep. I had to be lying down. I had to physically lie down, block out the eyes, shut the lights off, quiet, and then 10-minute nap. And that would enable me to continue on with the rest of my workday. And I myself felt a lot better, because that way, after lunch, so I've worked half a day, good, helped people, I feel good, I'm making money, I've talked with a few people and whatnot, great. Lunch, I've eaten, I've listened, I've done my daily listening, which is great. I've done some reading in my target language, and I got a nap, so now I'm ready for the afternoon. And of course, I also I tried to go make more coffee after that as well. So that was those were the lunch, that was my lunch. I had that set up for 3 or 4 years, 2 or 3 years, around there. So that was a solid time of every lunch, basically following that exact sort of schedule.
So let's take an example that, because the time situation is going to be a bit different for the people perhaps watching this. So let's say that they wake up at 6:30 in the morning. Now, like I said, they need to be to work at 9, so maybe they leave home a quarter after 8:30. Can people, right? Typically when people think about studying, it's, at the end of the day. Should they reconsider this and study early in the morning?
Yes, you should. And the one I was watching Judy's presentation from was it last week or a couple of weeks ago, and she said that she had made friends with, who was it, Michael Jackson and Madonna?
Yes,
because she knew the songs that well, and I was going, how lucky English learners are that so much great music is published and it can double as study time. Mandarin pop music doesn't really turn me on, and it's not very accessible. Korean pop, K-pop, that one I could still learn Korean if I wanted to go back to Korean. Yes, I could make K-pop a daily routine. But many languages, it's kind of difficult to find something to listen to all the time. And I mentioned that because that's what Judy had said, that she had learned a lot of her English or at least some of her English, not a lot, some of her English from listening to these songs. Yes, you can study and work. Yes, you can make progress. Yes, you should study earlier. And the way that I figured out best for me, especially getting up early in the morning, first of all, don't drink, at least not so much. So your alcohol intake has to be pretty much down. And you know me, I mean, I like to have a couple of beers and shots and whatnot. But honestly, if you want to, if that goal is there, you have to start making your body able to learn. And part of it, get rid of the alcohol, or at least minimize it. If anybody tells you that alcohol helps you with your studies, they're full of shit. They're lying. Send them to me. I will set them straight. Not a chance. I'll tell you why. Because with alcohol, it affects your short-term memory. Not only does it affect your short-term memory, it doesn't make you sleep very well. And if you're not sleeping well, then you're not remembering. Your brain isn't reconfiguring itself at night. And if you're not reconfiguring your brain at night, you can't get up early and attack the day. Drop the alcohol limit, drop it down, drop it down. I'm not saying eliminate it, I'm saying drop it down. In terms of like getting up early and studying, one of the things that I noticed that a lot of people who are fluent in languages have done and have said about their languages. And again, with English learners, it's a little bit different because you do have so much music available to you. You have so much content that's available to you that you can just put on and listen. So with me, with Mandarin, I would get up, and if I didn't work, I would go for a 45-minute walk. And in that time, I would split it up into 2 study sessions. First, I would either do characters. So I have like Memrise or Anki Droid or other flashcards. So I would just do flashcards, 1.5 laps of that, 20, 25 minutes. And it was good, dumb work. Like it's the mule work of learning Chinese. If you're going to learn Mandarin, if you're going to learn Japanese, any of those pictographic languages, you got to put in the time. You got to know the characters. There's no alphabet to fall back on. There's no sound. Like you have sounds, but you got to learn them later. You got to put in the time for the Chinese characters. So that's what I did. 15, 20 minutes in the morning, did that on my walk. After that, it was Chinese podcasts. And it was a lot of it. So I would do the Chinese characters. And then once I did the Chinese characters, so I could actually stop looking at my cell phone and look at the beautiful day that I was perfectly ignoring with my language studies. Oh, look at the sun's shining. Is it? I don't know. I'm studying these characters and I have to look at my cell phone. I would put in my headphones and I would listen to Chinese podcasts. That has continued throughout my studies and in every language that I've tried to learn, aside from ancient Greek and Latin, because those were difficult to find source material. I would just lots of listening, headphones. There was no more music unless it was in my target language. Like if it wasn't Russian, if it wasn't Mandarin, then I wasn't listening to it. It was podcasts and music in my target language only. So, I mean, TV, I didn't do that because I can't stand Chinese television. It's terrible, I tell you the truth. Russian movies are all right, but it's more the older ones rather than the newer ones. But Russian, up until recently, it was on YouTube that you could find, but now it's not so easy to find on the YouTube. Right. But so it was basically with that idea of when you have your whole day, and I mentioned lunch already, and I've mentioned my morning work and my morning routine. Throughout that whole day, it wasn't so much that I didn't want to push off studying to the end. Because if you do that, you're not going to do it. Like anything, you do the important things first. And if you want to learn your language, if you're going to really see success and progress, you got to put in the time and you got to do it early, because that way, when you get it done, you feel better having done it for the day. And that way you go to bed so much better You sleep so much better if you've done your job, you've gotten your exercise, and you've done your language studies, and you do that very early in the day. Oh, boom, you're sleeping well. And not so much alcohol, because again, doesn't help you sleep. Not at all. Even if people say it does, it doesn't. Your body doesn't repair itself as well.
So, if I understand you correctly, frequently you would be studying at 3 different points of the day, at least 2, maybe 3. Is that basically accurate?
Yes, in the bare bones. I can add one more. So my job was actually very good because it was kind of boring, but it enables me, it has fits and starts. So it's not continuous. And if I'm not meeting with a client, I have some time to myself. And what that enabled me to do, especially again, Chinese, if you're going to learn Chinese, you got to do the mule work. You got to learn the characters. This would be the same thing in Russian, Latin, anything else where you have to conjugate or you have to learn the forms of something. And all I did, pen, paper, start writing. I wrote down Chinese characters every minute that I had available, every spare minute so I would listen to Chinese headphones until I got to work. At work, set up, do the job, no client, sit down, start writing. And I would write down, I wrote all of the characters for HSK3 and HSK4. So that's, I don't know however many characters, 2,000, something like that.
Yeah.
2 lines each, just wrote them all down. And I didn't talk to anybody else. People would walk by my room and they'd be like, hey, Steve, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm busy. I'm writing Chinese characters. And if they want to stay and talk, I literally, while we were talking, I was still writing. My focus was learning the characters. I don't need any more negative work talk. I don't need any more, hey, did you see the game last night? I need to know this language. And that was the success I wanted. So with the morning, during the day, all the characters, during lunch, and then after work. I mean, yeah, geez, that sounds like a lot, doesn't it? It was a lot.
See, that's what I see. I'm thinking about everything you're saying. So, how essential is it that you didn't break your rhythm? I mean, following basically the same pattern day after day.
The one thing about it, like talking about like that rhythm, and I've heard this about working out, because I've been working out a lot more over the last couple of years, and you'll hear a lot of people talk about that quite a bit, wherein like you can't miss a workout. If you miss one, you're going to miss them all. Same with like eating properly and stuff like that. Like if you miss one meal could become like 10 meals. And it was like, what had to happen was there had to be a change to what I was doing in my day that didn't change everything, but that was integrated with it. So again, instead of listening to English podcasts, instead of listening to English news, instead of listening to English music during my walk, I would just listen to Chinese music. So I swapped it. I changed it. It wasn't a change to my day. I just changed what I was doing within that same time period. Same with the characters. It was like, and this is even more realistic now. And I mean, as a social media producer myself, I know how bad this is, but being able, it's like you have a choice. You can spend 10 to 15 minutes on your social media, and what are you going to learn? Probably nothing. You're going to see more of the negative Twitter box going on. Oh, Trump this, Trump that, Biden, Democrats, Republicans, this country's blowing up, that country, these people are that, swindlers. I mean, it's all, look at it. Okay, nothing's changed. And let's check your bank account. Are you any richer? No. Move on, get into your target language. And again, it was Mandarin Chinese, do the characters. That is worth more to me in my time than it is spending on social media. So again, it was, and I'm still walking. Like I'm walking, I'm listening to, I've swapped out the languages I'm listening to. I'm still, instead of playing on my phone and doing social media, I'm doing something productive. And then at lunch, yeah, it was like, well, I could go talk to my colleagues and complain about work and about what they said, or I could do something that's going to move me forward a little bit more. And that was a lot of it. And same with after work. I made it routine, but it wasn't any different from what I was doing anyway. It was, I guess the biggest thing was that, yes, I understand some people might be a little bit more sociable. They might want to socialize at lunchtime. Maybe after work, they want to go see people. I was more of the opinion. I'm like, you know what? You guys are great. You're wonderful people. It's not that I don't like you. It's not that I don't like my job or anything like that. It's that in order to make my day even more super productive, I have to feel like I'm learning something. And the way for me to learn was to go at lunchtime, spend the time learning Chinese, especially since I live in China, and it pays dividends. It does take a long time. Don't get me, oh my goodness. If anyone is studying Mandarin out there, they will know it's a slog. You got to put in the time. There's no two ways about it. And then especially after work, I know it was tough going back, but that choice of, do I spend the time going out for dinner? And I can tell you, you go for dinner with your colleagues, you're going to have a beer, you're going to start complaining about work. It's going to throw you off. It's not going to work. If anything, the one thing I would recommend is that the one change that you can make, aside from making it part of your daily routine, is give yourself that hour before you do anything else. So that could, I mean, it could be in the morning, it could be in the afternoon, it could be in the evening, but you have to give yourself an hour. No social media, no chatting with your friends, no going out for dinner first or having drinks. I'll just have one. You're not going to have one. I know you're lying. You're lying to yourself. You're lying to us. Just go do your hour. And I wonder, for the folks who have children, I don't know, you guys would probably be better able to answer this. Could you make it a study time with your kids? I don't know. I know a lot of parents read to their kids. They read with their children.
So,
but you have to sit down and be like, okay, kid one, kid two, quiet, get your books. We are going to study now, right? Kid three, kid four, you go make dinner.
Well, you're not too.
Or is it kid one makes dinner, kid three and four?
A lot of Vietnamese families, even now, will have 3 or 4 kids.
Right.
I don't know if you knew this, but at one time I ran a language school in Nha Trang in Vietnam. And one of our first students, our class sizes were capped at 6. Right. And we would do conversational English and pronunciation, and some vocabulary going with that. The students were higher A1, A1, B, A1, A2, B1 level, pretty much. Right. And one of our students, I gave him the materials, I gave him recordings, I gave him websites. It's 2015, okay, for context, it's 2015. And his fluency was really poor. He spoke very slowly, but after about 2 months, he could pronounce all the phonemes and everything else fairly accurately. And he told me at the very beginning, because he was, I'm not sure he graduated from high school. All right. And so he was a blue collar type of guy, but he wanted his kids to have more opportunities than he did. They were like 5 and 6 years old. And so he was taking this class, which was, we weren't charging very much, mind you. It was probably like $20 or $30 for the month, an hour and a half, 12 times a week. So, I mean, it was a good quality, but it was, unfortunate, it was still a lot. So I worked hard at it. And so anyway, he put in the time, and a lot of these parents, that's what they are doing. They want to be able to teach their kids the right pronunciation, or they may speak slowly, but it's good.
They have to. It's, I know, like when I was growing up, we were very fortunate that we were able, my school and my family, we were able to do intramural sports. So after school, we'd go we'd play soccer or basketball or whatever. So automatically that meant that we wouldn't get home until probably 6 p.m., at which point we would have to, it was dinner, and then you have to study at some point, right? You'd have to do your homework. within that framework, I mean, I remember when I was a kid growing up that we would sit at the dining room table. It was me, my brothers, and my sister. My sister would study on her own, though. She was a very good. My sister was the best student of my family, being the oldest as well. But she was very good at it. So, like my brothers and I, we were more like, it was like herding cats, more like than anything else. So it was like, sit down and do your homework. It was very difficult for my mom to get us to do that. But I wonder. I mean, God willing, if I ever have kids, I mean, I think it's one of those things where you have to be able to do it together, like study together. So it's not just because that way you're able to get something from it as well. It's not just forcing your kids to do it. And I know, kids ask for help all the time. I mean, it's mom, what's this? How do you do this? What's 3 + 2? And you're like, come on, you have fingers, use them.
Right.
Things like that. I mean, so it's but with languages with English, I know you can incorporate flashcards and everything. One thing my dad used to do on the way to school was he had this, I can't remember what the guy was. I know he's a motivational speaker, but I don't remember what it was. But my dad had a tape that he would just play over and over again. I swear, I didn't know which part actually ever began. I don't know the whole tape. All I know is that it just kept on going. All because my dad just listened to it all the time. But it was like this sort of motivational speaking, like how to do public speaking, how to have confidence. And he would just play that in the car. Again, even if you have to swap out, or you have to get your contact language with contact time with the language instead of your listening to whatever it is in the news, put on the English radio, your English songs, not just for your kids. I mean, you can listen to some kids' music if you need to, for sure, put that time in as well, because there's growth opportunities available as well. But I mean, swap it out, push the level, change it up a little bit. It doesn't have to be negative news. You can listen to other wholesome podcasts. There's a lot, again, with English, there's a lot of parenting podcasts. There's a lot of other kids podcasts that are out there. I mean, it's not, you don't have to lose anything just because you're trying to get your kids to pay attention as well, right? I mean, it can be a communal effort to study and to learn together, I think.
So speaking about different age levels and studying, whether it be indirectly like the music or the podcast, maybe more of a passive form.
Yes.
Rather than actively paying attention. As people progress, a lot of the people we have listening are going to be from A2 to B2. And some of them know what this designations mean. How might their motivations or their study tactics or strategies, how might that change as they're going? And how much time, assuming that they study well,
how much
time are we talking about?
That's a very good question, because going back to like when I was studying Latin and ancient Greek, I really didn't have any concept of this. And especially when I was studying Ukrainian and French, I mean, I just had no idea for time management. Very luckily, the HSK, the Mandarin Chinese, has been stratified. Currently, it's 1 to 6, but it's going to go 1 to 9 eventually. And they give target numbers of hours that students need to spend to possibly attain that designation, that level. So HSK 1 is kind of like you have to spend 100 hours. Basically, it's 100 hours per level. But 100 hours per level cumulative. And I think the upper levels maybe is 160 hours, 200 hours or something like that. So it's 100 hours, 150 hours, 200 hours, and then like 300 hours to get to level 5 or level 6. One of the things that I did that I recommend to just about all my students and any language learner is to get a spreadsheet and a timer. So the spreadsheet, you're going to mark down your 5 skills. You're going to have your speaking, listening, reading, and writing. And then you're going to have like grammar or characters. For me, like characters was one of the things that I was for Mandarin Chinese. You put the date, like today's date, including like Monday, or what day is it today? It's Sunday, May 20,
Sunday.
whatever it is. Right.
22nd.
So you put that down, and then you have your skills up top, you have your date over here, and every column you keep track of the amount of time that you spent in contact with the language that day. I found that was a great motivator because I could visualize what I was seeing. I could visualize how much time I had spent in contact with the language. And so with the timer, literally at work, again, every time that, because we were given timers for my job, we have our client meetings are a little bit like, go, by the timer, follow the time. All right, I'll follow the time. And so I took that, and when I was writing the characters, I would press go on the timer, and I would start writing characters. I would go until like the next client would show up, and then I'd press stop. I would mark down that time that I spent on a piece of paper, and throughout the day, I would keep a running total. At the end of the day, like after that 1 hour after work language session. So, I mean, I've listened to music, listened to podcasts, I'm doing the characters, I've done my lunchtime reading, and now I've done my hour of textbook work after work. Those 4 major study sessions, tabulated all in my spreadsheet, and I would see how much time I would have spent every day on my language. For your learners with that A1, A2, and all of that, you're lucky because that's the Common European Framework for Languages, or whatever it is, right?
Yes, it is.
So with those, they do have, I'm not sure if they have it for English, because English is kind of terrible in the sense that we just kind of expect you to know it. There's not like, oh, after 10 hours, you're going to be able to speak like, passive sentences and stuff like that, right? Whereas I know for like Chinese, I mentioned the HSK 100 hours. French, you know who would do this? The Department of the Foreign Language Institute for the United States Military, FSI, I think, Foreign Services Institute, and they have a foreign language. Them and the Europeans Common Framework people.
European, yep.
They have. So the European one goes by the European language system. The Defense Institute, or the Foreign Language Institute, they go by, if you are a native speaker, how long will it take you to become proficient in a language that's not similar to English? And Mandarin Chinese, and they have them in 5 different levels, like level 5, yep. Japanese, Russian, Korean. I don't know why.
Arabic, level 5. Chinese.
Arabic, Mandarin, and Cantonese. So those are all
Georgian.
Level 5.
Georgian is 4+. It didn't qualify as a 4, but not good enough for a 5. 4+.
Which is just like, okay, they had to reinvent something there. But yeah, so level 4, level 3, and they would give you a number of weeks. The easier ones, Spanish, French, ones that are Italian. Very similar to English, Italian, one similar to English. Maybe you could get by doing a semester, 24 weeks, half a year, and you could be decent enough to be able to work within the language. Chinese was 88 weeks. Okay. So that's one thing. That was one motivator for me, was like, how long until I can do this language? It was a very good question, because I mean, again, you look at any book, you're just like, I don't understand it. No idea. This is all sticks, pick up sticks. That's what this language is to me, basically. For the Common European Framework, now to more directly answer your question, how long, they should print how long it takes to learn French, Russian, like any of those other languages that are found within the European bloc. They would have an hour, a sort of an hour delineation, how much time it should take someone to hit A1, A2, B1, B2, C2, blah, 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 blah. They haven't, I think Russian was about 800 hours, contact hours to hit C2, C1. What's the lower one? B2, all right,
so
C1.
So A1, A2, B1, B2.
Right. And so with that, like, If you have trouble, especially if you are A1 or A2, and you're like, I hate this language and I hate the fact that I have to learn it, no problem. We understand. Pick an hour, pick a time and hit that time, and then put that time in every day. You put that number in your spreadsheet, and then when you're calculating all of your time you spent every day and it totals up, you can even have in your spreadsheet 200 hours to become A or B1. You take that hour, that time, and you subtract every day that you spend. So just look at it that way. Every morning that you get up and you spend 15 minutes on your conjugations, you're that much closer to hitting B2, B1 level, B2 level.
I have the hours. You'd be so proud of me. I just Googled it.
Good.
And I found the University of Cambridge.
Okay.
And so, according to the University of Cambridge, to be at an upper A1 level, right, the very basic level of proficiency, it's 90 to 100 hours of study, approximately. And like you said, it's 200 hours to the top of A2, 400 hours to top of B1, 600 to B2, 800 C1, 1200 C2.
Right. So those are good numbers because you're asking about how to. I gave you my sort of study breakdown throughout the day, and I can tell you at the end of the day, all told, if including listening, character writing, and textbook work, it was usually around 2 to 3 hours a day that I would get in, and that was per work day. And that's actually one of the reasons I liked going to work, was because it gave me that structure to follow. And I was like, yes, there's no distractions. I only have, it's work and textbooks, go. That was it. But for those hours, like, so to do 1,200 hours, let's divide that by 3 hours. It's going to take you 400 days to hit that. Now, 400 days, that's over a year and a half. You might think you can do that. You won't.
Yeah. There's a
Let me tell you why you're not going to do that. So one of the things is, it's very easy to look at that, and this is, I mean, I'm seduced by these numbers. It's like, oh, well, 1,200 hours to get to C1, that's only 3 hours a day. But then you're like, yeah, you still have to work. If you have kids, good luck. I mean, you have to commute. You have to talk to other people at some point that not in your target language. You probably have to do other things like cook, clean, and, pay bills.
Take a shower.
Stuff. Take a shower would be great. But 3 hours, and it's not just 3 hours. It's like at some point you can't just you can just listen to the radio for 3 hours. But if you want to become proficient to take a test like the B2 or C1, you're going to have to read, you're going to have to write, you're going to have to find time to practice those other skills. So finding enough time, even doing 1 hour of that, try to read in a foreign language for 1 hour. You almost lose your mind. I bet 3 minutes is as long as you can go before like, okay, Twitter.
Well, see, there's the thing is that a lot of people nowadays, people don't have the discipline to do that in their own language. Just pick up the newspaper in your own native language and try reading it for 10 or 15 minutes.
You can't. So that is another reason why I encourage people to get a stopwatch, get a clock, a timer. Preferably, what you would do, I'm just looking at my cell phone here. One of the things that you would do is that you would turn on the timer function of your cell phone. Like you go to this thing, boom, like that. I don't know if you can see that, not whatever.
It's a little
5
bright,
minutes,
yeah.
Stopwatch. And you start it. You don't close it down. The only thing you can close it down for is if you're using a dictionary, but I also suggest, if you can, a secondary electronic device, if you can. If not, paper dictionary is fine. If not, then you use your cell phone for a dictionary. You do not change what app you're using. You just use the dictionary and you find a timer somewhere else. You mark down your start time, and you just go. One of the reasons I like having a stopwatch is because I see those numbers going. I see them, and it's a reminder. Like if I ever get up and go refill the coffee, or I need to go to the bathroom or anything, it's like, well, then all of a sudden you're in limbo, and that's dangerous, because you're in limbo. You're like, oh well, I'll just go this. I'll just check this. No, 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 no. You can't just check, because your timer's going. And if you want to hit that B1 level, you want to tabulate that spreadsheet, you want to see those hours come down, you get back at it. That's why you keep that stopwatch going. It's staring at you. It's your manager. It's your time manager. That's what it is.
So now I'm going to ask you more for what you might give advice for people who are studying English. So as you had explained, I'm sorry. So as you'd explained on the spreadsheet, you'd have 5 distinct sections. So let's say then that they are A2, all right? They're A2 right now. And let's just say, as an example, that they have maybe an hour and a half every day for studies, that they are firm. They're fairly confident they could dedicate an hour and a half. Should they be looking to try to spread out the time every day each so that it's identical among them? Or should they have maybe some days where they focus just on 1 or 2 things, and another day they focus on other things? What would you suggest, or how can they determine what's best for themselves?
Well, for that, I would, there's a couple things that I would suggest. Going back to working out, like you wouldn't work out the same muscles all the time, right? You'd focus on upper body. You might focus on arms, your chest, the back, your legs. You might do more cardio one day rather than strength training. You might do mobility works and keep your joints moving. So every day you are moving, but you're not doing the same thing, but you're still within the purview of staying active. So that's one thing, and that's not just health, it also keeps it interesting. So you have different things to look forward to, and one thing leads to another. So you have to do your mobility workouts so that you can move, so you can do your cardio. You got to do your cardio so you get the endurance to do your strength training as well. I mean, some people don't need to do as much cardio. They might not want to, but it's one of those things that if you're able to do cardio, then you can you can climb stairs better. So there's like a little added benefit. So taking that analogy there, going into looking at languages, like how do you break down your time? As soon as you know the skills that you need to work on, reading, writing, listening, and speaking, and then that 5th column is probably grammar. It's grammar, because grammar is so bloody boring that no one wants to study it. No one likes teaching it. And if they do, they're kind of weird, or they don't know that they're good at it, which is very bizarre, because many English teachers themselves have difficulty teaching grammar, because every student will have different grammar problems. It's not just like, here's the worksheet. All you students will now know this grammar, therefore you will have grammar. No, it's student 1 will have this grammar problem. Student 2 will have this grammar problem. So it becomes very personal in that sense. To break that all down, what do you choose? How do you incorporate it? One of the things that I found was that, so in breaking it, listening in the morning, doing the characters in the morning, doing the characters, reading in the afternoon, and then textbook, I found that was just a very good way to break it up throughout the day. Like I could fit listening in 15, 20 minutes. I could do it. I didn't have to, and it was, a lot of it was like passive listening, extensive listening, as they call it, right? So I didn't have to focus on anything. So I could relax my brain, but still have, the phonemes going through my ears, still have the sounds, the intonations, the sentence, the breathing, and everything going through, which that is a very highfalutin way of describing. I'm just listening to the language. But that's what's happening when you're passively listening. Those things are happening to your brain and to your ears. Focused listening is a little bit more difficult, because it's like, again, focused reading. Unless you know what they're talking about, it gets very difficult. But in terms of the characters, I mean, I found that by spending little pieces of time actually this job was perfect for it, because writing characters, again, is so monotonous, so boring, that it's to sit down and do an hour of character writing in Chinese. Good luck. Difficult. Same with conjugations. I mean, it's very difficult to do that. Or like for English, it would be like, where do you add the S at the end of a verb? Very good question. I bet most English teachers couldn't answer that question. But you could sit down and focus on S verbs, S endings for, 3 or 4 minutes, pick out 3 or 4 verbs. The textbook work, again, that was very good at the end of the day, because it was like, then I didn't have to think about what to do. It was just like, whatever the textbook is open to do, I do the textbook. So that's sort of how I would recommend people incorporate it into the day. You have to find out what works for you. Passive listening is easy. You can't rely on it. Writing down sentences, write down love letters. Oh, thee, my beautiful face. You, my beautiful love. You are so wonderful and rich. Please marry me. Things like this. But practice, vary things up like that. And then same with the textbook, finding a good textbook. I don't know. Do you guys use a specific textbook for your classes, or what do you use?
So I never taught at private language schools in Vietnam. I only taught for an Australian university, and they use proprietary materials.
Right.
I didn't see anything like New English. I didn't see any of the standards that I saw in China. It seems like it's just a hodgepodge. There really is. Do you have any recommendations?
Collins has, I think, because there's a lot of the IELTS books. Those would be, and I think, is it Collins that publishes like IELTS speaking, IELTS reading? They have very specific, targeted.
And so does the University of Cambridge,
University of Cambridge. Yes, Pearson as well. Pearson, they publish these series. The British Council itself, their website has a lot of material on it that's very useful, not just for students, but also for teachers who need to learn how to teach specific parts of it. So they've compiled quite a bit of material. It's their job to make English very accessible for people around the world. When I was teaching at university, we used different textbooks for each course. And I'm not sure. I mean, the writing textbook was good. I can't remember. It was the New College Writing. I don't remember, by John Langham, I think. Robert Langham. Anyway, doesn't matter. So for textbooks, I think it's not so much about a recommendation. It's whatever your textbook you're using for your class, or whatever textbook you could be using if you were going to class. Because again, I didn't take Mandarin lessons for a long time because I got fed up. I was like, I have to learn this language on my own. I can't rely on a teacher. I just had the textbooks myself. You find a course, you look at the textbook, you go get that textbook, and then you treat your time as if you're in that class, and you just use that textbook. So pick one. Just pick one and then follow it. Don't stop. Keep on going, sort of thing. And you can set that as a goal that you will get through that textbook. If you can Google it, best ESL textbook for A2, best ESL, best English learners textbook for B1, something like that. And then take a look at a few different results, see if any names keep on popping up, and then get it and just make that one part, but do not make it your only part of your studies. I think that's probably one of the biggest things, is that you can't just rely on your textbook. And it's similar that you can't just rely on your teacher. Your teacher cannot teach you a language. You learn a language. You teach yourself, because it's your brain has got to go through. You got to understand it. When teacher makes a mistake about the S endings in class, you're like, that doesn't make sense. That's not what the textbook says. You have to have more than one source. And so that's why you're passively listening. You're writing out your own verb conjugations, or your own how to write a letter in English. Dear sir, How are thee today? That's not very good English. That's very old English. How are you today? I'm writing to express my interest in the job application about blah, blah, computer engineering, etc. Right? So you can practice letter writing for 10 to 15 minutes. At lunch, write an email to somebody. Try to write a newspaper article. Because you know what the newspaper articles are like in your language. Could you write something like that in English? Try it. See what happens. So that would be how you could sort of find out what you should be working on, what you want to be working on throughout every day. But especially with like, if you have a target of like B1, B2, take a look at what they need you to do at that level and mark that down. Work towards that skill. I think that would be very helpful for a lot of people to have that in mind, in addition to their stopwatch, in addition to the spreadsheet that they are tracking all of their study time.
What if they find that they come to loathe or really dislike practicing or studying one of the skills?
They will.
Within it.
You'll hate it. Yeah, you'll absolutely hate it.
And so in this situation, sometimes you just have to grit your teeth. You just have to bear through it.
Shut up and get it done.
Okay.
If they need any more inspiration, the one person I would send them to do, look up a guy named David Goggins on Instagram or on YouTube. But Instagram, he's a former Navy SEAL, and he encourages me to run in the morning. He's very vulgar. He's worse than I am. But basically the idea is that if you wake up and you're like, I don't want to run today, imagine him standing beside you, not whispering, saying, or you could shut up, put your shoes on and go for a run. Like that sort of response, like you're whinging in bed, but then there's this guy standing beside you, like, shoes on, go. Just do it. Put the time in. You're going to hate it. You're going to hit a wall. You're going to hit a wall. You're going to plateau. You're not going to see progress. What's even worse, and I've had this in my own language studies, that you're going to be practicing so much, you're going to be thinking you're making progress, and then you'll go to say something to somebody and they'll go, what did you say? And you're like, oh, why did I even bother wasting my Saturday try writing this all out? But you got to push through that, because again, it's not them. They are not your goal. You are your goal. You got to make that happen for you. You're not doing it for anybody else. No one else can teach it. You have to do it for you. And so that person is just like, when someone doesn't understand what you say, that's just one person. You're going to try again. Tomorrow's a new day. The next person at the next bar is a new attempt. I mean, it's just keep going. That's your motivation. It's got to be a personal inner motivation that pushes you through those sort of times when you're like, I should know what I'm talking about, but nobody else seems to know what I'm talking about at all. So, and I know, like, especially as speaking English, it can be very daunting. Writing English, anytime you're productive, like speaking or writing, you get very self-conscious about, like, am I doing it right? Keep on pushing through. Just keep on doing it. You're going to get bored with it. You're going to plateau. You got to keep on going through. You have to keep in mind what your goal is. If your goal is B1, B2, C1, then guess what? When that bad letter goes out or whatever, just start writing the next one.
Yeah. Thank you for making that, well, blunt, but also it's good that people really understand and appreciate what kind of dedication is going to be necessary if they truly want to master any language, right? Any second language. And they did it, right? They mastered their first language the same way, actively and passively, over lots of years. And so you're going to have to put in comparable effort to do it again.
So there is also one of the problems with getting older and being an older language learner. You're going to hear this: I'm too old. Oh, the brain stops. It's true, actually. Apparently, your brain at the age of 12 stops formulating all those sort of synapses, like a lot of them, right? It's not that you can't learn anything. It's just that physiologically, your brain stops doing something up there that in theory means that you can't create as much new learning materials within your brain as you did before. Which again is, I would encourage the parents out there, if you have children and they're whinging about learning English, go like, give them a timeline. Listen, you only have another 3 years until you're 12 and you can't learn anymore. That's a terrible threat, I know, but give them a timeline, a deadline of some sort, if only just to encourage them. But if you're an older learner, don't think for a second that you can't learn anything else. It's not true at all. The one thing that would be difficult for you to learn is the accent. That is where the primary difference happens when you're a young kid and then like you're a young learner and you're an older learner. Judy mentioned this last week when she was talking about her accent, that she wanted her accent. And a lot of people think that their accent is a bad thing, or that their accent is distracting people from understanding what they're saying, their pronunciation. It's not true. A lot of the standardized tests allow for variations in your pronunciation. It's you're allowed to have a thick accent. It's more about, are you communicating properly? Are you using common terminology, maybe like being able to grade your language for whoever your listener is, and then also being able to express yourself when you don't know what to say. Paraphrasing is a good example of that. So, but yeah, I mean, you're an older learner. I think one of the best things about being an older learner is that you can be more focused. You're going to know, you're not going to be as distracted. I mean, you can sit there and go, I only have 45 minutes. I'm going to do 45 minutes. I'm going to do 10 minutes of this, 10 minutes of that, 13 minutes of that, 17 minutes of that, and so on, right? A kid has a very difficult time doing that. They don't have the concept of like, you have limited time. Ladies and gentlemen, older learners, yeah, I mean, your time is precious, because it's like, if your husband's looking at you or your wife is looking at you, your kids are looking at you going, why are you learning that? I mean, why don't you just go do this? You're going to hear it from colleagues. They're going to say, well, what are you learning that for? That's where it comes down. It's like, listen, because it's something I've chosen to do, something I want to do. I know as an older learner, you don't have a parent telling you to do it. You have to do it yourself. You have the reverse. You have people asking you, why are you doing that? Why are you wasting your time? You're not wasting your time. You're not just bettering yourself. That's the wishy-washy philosophical way. You better yourself. No. You're improving your opportunity. You're opening yourself up, especially with language, being able to access the libraries of knowledge, the movies, the documentaries that are available, the YouTube of the world. I mean, there's lots of reasons to be able to use English as a tool to learn more, not just about English, but about what you want to do in life, or like your job, how to parent, how to make more money, trading stocks or Bitcoin, or not how to trade Bitcoin. I mean, things like that, where that's available to you if you spend the time learning, like sharpening your English language skills.
Keep your eye on the prize.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's a good way to wrap things up. Steve, is there anything that you wanted to mention or talk about that you didn't get an opportunity?
Oh, I know I've been talking quite a bit. I hope people were able to pull out a few things from there. In terms of like, just keep on going. I know it's tough. It's difficult. You're going to hear that negative criticism, that sort of question, that's going to pop up quite a bit. You're going to be distracted or defeated because your teacher might not always understand you as well. They might be like, what's he saying? What are you saying in this paragraph here? You got to push through, put in the time, give yourself that daily goal, that grade goal, that time goal, and just go for it. And whatever it takes, you're going to have to find something that you're interested in doing and learning so that you are able to put the time in each and every day. The only other thing I would say is that if they are going to pick that hours that we mentioned, like the Common European Framework, the 1,200 hours,
Yes.
if you miss a day, if you miss a study session, don't worry. It's not the end of the world. It's a language. You're not a doctor. I mean, if you're a doctor, okay, but language students, no one dies. No one dies if you skip a lesson. Okay, it's you can dial it in pretty easily. It's not a problem. But you know, it's where, and the same with the workouts, like you skip one, you're going to skip them all. No, I mean, you miss one, it's fine. Take a rest, take a time off. But the next one that pops up, do it. So out of those 3, morning, noon, and night, if you miss the morning one, fine, don't worry about it. Do the noon. Make sure you do the noon, make sure you do the night, and then get right back on it. I mean, if you want to take the weekend off, fine. But then what you have to do, if you're going to take time off, take the time off. Don't sit there thinking, oh, I should be. Don't. Stop. If you're going to take time off, take the time off, take a breather. Because you know what? You might actually realize, like, there might be a time where you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. I have other things I got to do and I can't study anymore. So I'm not going to. And that's okay. You can always come back to it. Again, people aren't going to die. You don't learn English today. No one's going to die. Unless you're an interpreter and it's your job and someone dies because you didn't study. Oh, that'd be terrible. Don't do that.
Or maybe you missed the day that they go over the vocabulary you need to know when you're in an airplane, right? And so you don't know how to open the emergency door.
Yeah, but those things are pretty intuitive, aren't they? I mean,
yeah.
Jump.
Yeah, they even have the pictures, but
they do, which is good. But yeah, it's, if you miss a lesson, don't worry about it. If you miss a session, don't beat yourself up. And if you're going to take time off, take time off. Give yourself
actually enjoy it.
Yeah. Yes. Go do something else. I mean, don't think about it. Don't stress about it. That will be even worse. Because if you stress about it, you're not taking time off and you're going to be more upset. You're going to be resentful even towards the language. And you don't want that. You want to develop as much positive connotations as you can with your language.
Right. Steve, thank you for coming on tonight. You were very informative about motivation, setting a timetable, how to keep motivated. And good luck to you in staying motivated.
Go on about this.
This is what I asked you to do. You had plenty to say. This was perfect.
I hope people got something from it. I hope they really enjoyed it and that they're able to utilize some of the things I said, and that it helps your students and helps the young parents and the older parents out there as well. So I know it's tough, and we're in busy times with things. Things seem scary, but life isn't ending. It's not going to end.
Before you leave East Asia, certainly come down to Vietnam if you haven't been. Yes. Vietnam is open for tourism again anyway. So
is it from China? Can I fly there from Beijing at the moment?
I don't know. Okay, that I don't know. But
where should I go in Vietnam?
Well, all right. Well, I lived in Nha Trang for almost a year. It's in South Vietnam, closer to the center. And near there, Nha Trang, it's about 200,000 people. So it's still in the top 10 or 15 for Vietnam. And then there's also a mountain town in the lowlands called Da Lat, which is fairly temperate. It doesn't snow in the winter, but it gets to like about 2 or 3 in the winter. And it's very famous for Japanese and Korean and even Chinese movies. They'll show romance scenes from this city. And it's a bit, and so Nha Trang and Da Lat are a bit, they're not near Hanoi. It's not Saigon. It's not Da Nang. So Da Lat especially have a lot of Vietnamese tourists, some foreign. Nha Trang, well, hey, you go to Nha Trang, you get to practice your Russian.
Is that where all the
Russians? Yeah, they spend like 3 or 6 months of the year there. And there's even a Rolls-Royce dealership in there because of the Russians.
I wonder who they're selling
to. That ain't
to.
the locals.
Is Dalat the place? That's where Starbucks gets their beans from, I think. Some of them.
Vietnam's the second largest exporter in the world of coffee beans. Maybe it's Dalat. I don't know.
Fantastic coffee in Vietnam. Yeah, no, I was there years ago, over a decade ago already. I backpacked all along the whole country. I did the banana pancake trail. All the foreigners, like you start in Bangkok, you go through Cambodia, through Vietnam into Laos, and then back into Thailand. Yeah, I did the whole thing. Crazy. Oof. Would not do it like that again. Rough times.
Wow. Well, maybe go back again before you head back to Canuck Land. Is that an official name, Canuck Land?
No, it's Canada.
Right. The capital is Toronto, right?
Oh, it's Ottawa.
Stop
Americanizing yourself.
Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching tonight's live stream. Come back next week, same Hobbit time, same Hobbit channel. And Steve, thanks for coming again tonight.
Cheers. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Yep.